Yes. Well, good morning and good day to you. This is Andrew Williams Jr. and Concordian Conversations, live and in living color. And today is June 18th. We're with the Center for American Studies at Concord in Concord, Massachusetts for Juneteenth 2023 weekend. We began this on Friday. We continued it yesterday. Today, Sunday, we're here. And I'll let our co-host, Stuart Sinclair Weeks, founder of Center for American Studies at Concord, and joining us will be Mr. Calvin Pearson, founder of project1619.org. So please, Stuart, you have to do the honors of letting people know who we are, where we are, and what we're doing.
Welcome, friends. I'm going to read you what we have noted for this morning in these offerings from Concord. This morning, we are at the replica of Thoreau's cabin site at Walden Pond. And Thoreau said, "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not when I came to die, discover that I had not lived." And imagine, friends, what could be more disconcerting than to discover on our deathbed that we hadn't really lived? Maybe that's enough to inspire us with the thought of reincarnation. We give it another try. But I'm going to point this camera at this replica, pretty exact replica of Thoreau's cabin site. Unfortunately, they're doing some repairs, so it's sort of boarded off, but I'd like you to have a look. I'll repeat those words from Walden. "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not discover what it had to teach, and not when I came to die, to discover that I hadn't lived." We all know the expression, live and learn. I think it's an important one for those who are truly alive. So this morning, what we've written is the concluding words from Thoreau's perennial bestseller, published in pretty much every language, Walden. And it ends with the same words that the book of Revelation all but begins. And that is, "The sun is but a morning star." The sun is but a morning star. And I'll read that concluding passage from Walden in a few minutes because it's remarkable. It's all about resurrection, which the sun itself is about. So today, this morning, before we head to the First Parish Church, we're going to be reflecting on Mother Earth and Father Sunday, which we inaugurated this Earth Day, which was a Saturday. And the next day being Sunday, we brought to Mother Earth Father Sun, because the central part of our work is how we must learn to work together, beginning with mothers and fathers, men and women, with this wonderful complement, this potential complement, if we can remember that we're on the same side. We'll also touch on the upcoming Walden Earth Care and Live Aid 2 crescendoing concert of concerts, and the New World Drama Festival that takes up former Congressman John Lewis's words that the arts and community drama is the avenue for vital social reform in our time. John Lewis, as some may know, he experienced the effects of the attempts at social reform in his day when he was clobbered over the head in Selma's Pettit Bridge. And towards the end of his life, he said these interesting words that we'll be taking up. And I'm going to invite my colleagues here to speak to them if they wish. That a little recognized form of reform, social activism, is community dramas and the arts. And I'd like to ask Andrew and Calvin if you have any thoughts at all on this. So this is a real conversation. I don't want to simply hold forth. I'm going to pass this to you, and then I'm going to get a passage that speaks to this as well.
Well, thank you so much, Stuart. Again, this is Andrew Williams Jr., and I am an example of the lived experience that John Lewis went through. I am 65 years old, so I've been here from the beginning of our civil rights struggle, and I look forward to finding ways that we can connect our lived experience and the drama of life and having our own impact on the legacy that we're involved with. As Stuart has mentioned, it's community drama, or as John Lewis mentioned, it's the community drama that brings to life these academic ideas or even geopolitical thoughts about what it really means to have change. But it is the drama of the interaction between people on the streets, in marches, in their homes, that actually do make the difference. We can look at our media at any given moment and see what's happening around the world. But what's really happening in front of us is what makes the change possible in our local communities. I'm so honored to be in the car with someone who you'll soon meet, Mr. Calvin Pearson, because his drama has been impactful not just for the community within which he lives, and not only here in America, but it has impacts on a global stage. And it's only when this drama is shared with the rest of the world that you begin to understand that you too can be great by being good and by doing those things that you see are needed to be done. And like John Lewis encouraged us to find good trouble, we don't have to be a politician. We don't have to be an elected official to be able to do good in our lives. And that's why I do support and commend you to join us in what we're calling the citizens movement. And this is where we play the drama out, or the work we do now will have everlasting impacts. But now briefly over to you, to Calvin Pearson.
Good morning. This is Calvin Pearson, founder of Project 1619 Incorporated in Hampton, Virginia. We tell the true story of those enslaved Africans who were brought to English North America in 1619. And to learn more about what we do, you can go to project1619.org. So going back to the question, most people today are in the hustle and bustle of just living. As the saying goes, when was the last time you stopped and smelled the roses? And I think that's what the rose is trying to say, that that we look at the sunrise as a new beginning. So I believe in the sunrise and also in the sunset. To me, the sunrise is the beginning of a new day. To me, it's the cleansing of the soul from yesterday's trial and tribulations. So the question is, when was the last time fullness of nature in its full bloom, the four seasons? So I think what he's trying to say is that sometimes we just need to take a break from life and just try to go out and enjoy life as it is, enjoy nature, enjoy the sunrise, enjoy the sunset. I hear a lot of people when they pray, they said, thank God that I saw one more sunrise, and that give me the grace to see one more sunset. So there was a lot of people believe in the sunrise and the sunset has true meaning in our life. And Thoreau probably was a visionary before his time. So his words, although spoken and written back in the 1800s, are still relevant to today's people and today's society. So what I can tell you is that we as a people have gone through a whole lot, especially those people, brown and black people in this country. But despite all that we've gone through, nature renews our soul. And that's why it's always important that we just stop and take a moment and renew our soul, renew our strength through the beauty of nature.
Calvin, those are beautiful, beautiful words. I really thank you very, very much. And friends, the work of this weekend, this Juneteenth, is to show that although there weren't many Black people who lived in Concord, there were some who you'll be discovering who were really key, and Concordians such as Thoreau, who along with Emerson, King considered two of his main teachers, had a lot to say about abolition and related issues. But I want to bring us, inspired by Calvin's words, to the heart of Thoreau's genius. In this passage that ends Walden. And I invite you to weigh each word on the gold scale, because it's a remarkable passage. He is an artist and he's a scientist. He's a poet and he's a man of the world at the same time. So his perennial bestseller, Walden, published, translated in almost every language, ends with the following words. There is an incessant and ongoing influx of novelty into the world, and yet we tolerate incredible dullness. I need only suggest what kind of sermons are still listened to in the most enlightened countries. There are such words as joy and sorrow, but they are only the burden of a psalm, sung with a nasal twang, while we believe in the ordinary and the mean. We think that we can change our clothes only. It is said that the British Empire is very large and respectable, and that the United States are a first-rate power. We do not believe that a tide rises and falls behind every man, and Dr. King comes to mind, which can float the British Empire like a chip if he should harbor it in his mind. Who knows what sort of 17-year locust will come out of the ground? The government of the world I live in was not framed like that of Britain and after-dinner conversations over the wine. The life in us is like the higher than man has ever known, and flood the parched uplands to drown out all our muskrats. It was not always dry land. I see far inland the banks which its freshets. Everyone has heard the story, which has gone the rounds of New England, of a strong and beautiful bug, which came out of the dry leaf of an old table of apple wood, which had stood in a farmer's kitchen for 60 years, first in Connecticut and then afterwards in Massachusetts. From an egg deposited in the living tree many years earlier still, as appeared by counting the annual layers beyond it, which was heard, that is, this bug gnawing out for several weeks, hatched perchance by the heat of an urn So something hot on the table that heated up the table, and then the bug himself. And now Thoreau goes on. Who has not felt his faith in a resurrection, in immortality, by hearing of this? Who knows what beautiful in winged life, whose egg has been buried for ages under many concentric layers of woodiness, and the dead, dry life of society, deposited at first in the alburnum of the green and living tree, which has been gradually converted into the semblance of its well-seasoned tomb, heard perchance gnawing out, again that old bug now for years, by the astonished family of man as they sat around the festive board, that it may unexpectedly come forth from amidst society's most trivial and hand-selled furniture to enjoy its perfect summer at last. And I think of a dear friend of mine who said he's been living to die. He happens to be of the black color of skin, so most understandable, given how he's been welcomed and treated in this society, which is what we're addressing today. And I will ask him if he wishes to speak to this image of resurrection. Thoreau ends Walden. I did not say that John or Jonathan will realize all this, but such is the character of that morrow, which mere lapse of time can never make to dawn. The light which puts out our eyes is darkness to us. Only that day dawns to which we are awake. There's more day to dawn. The sun is but a morning star. And so Andrew Williams Jr., the host or co-host of this offering, you who on Dr. King's assassination day came alive and decided that you were called to do your best to carry on that work, you of African American, Native American, of Anglo American, to bring our peoples together. My question to you, dear brother, is if you have stopped living to die, but are now resurrecting yourself, what does Concord mean? What does Thoreau mean? What does this passage mean? And what does this work mean to you?
Well, thank you, Stuart Sinclair Weeks. And before I answer, I do want to acknowledge that we have two guests here, Lloyd Helferty, who is from Canada, but is now in Taiwan. And we have another guest, and I'd like to ask if you would take this opportunity to unmute and open your video to say hello. I'll be happy to provide you that time before I commit my answer. Or if you raise your hand, I'll be happy to invite you in. But yes, I am Andrew Williams Jr. And as Stuart Sinclair Weeks indicates, it was on the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King that I was faced with new reality. At that time, being almost 10 years old in Macon, Georgia, I'm I guess, much like Stuart, perhaps an odd duck to a degree. I began speaking in complete sentences at 18 months old and began reading it at 3. And so my mother had always been able to encourage me to read, and she shared with me newspapers and magazines from around the world. So there was this pharmacy that was not too far from my home, where every week I'd go to purchase my comic books and newspapers. And on the date of April 4th, 1968, I was told two things by this white woman that I've been buying all my books from for all these years. The one, stop talking white. And secondly, to stop reading, or I'd end up dead like that nigger king. And it just flabbergasted me. I had no clue what this meant. And when I explained it to my mother, she came back and chastised the woman, but then we had to talk. And my mother, though not, quote, educated, had always been homeschooled and self-educated. She let me know that at one time, all the humans on the earth came from one place. And the people at that place called themselves and later that place was called Africa. That those Europeans had traveled to Africa and bought or captured those in that place and brought them here. Well, in Georgia, was now the United States, the indigenous Americans here. And unfortunately, when Dr. King shifted from talking about civil rights for Blacks in the United States and began talking about human rights for those Asians who were the victims of our war in Vietnam, and spoke about the atrocities that were happening around the world, that it may have been that shift from civil rights to human rights in my mother's mind and others that caused Dr. King to be targeted by our United States government agencies to not bring to the awareness of the world that there are, quote, more of, quote, us than them. And if we ever got to a level of equality in America, that the whites believe that we would end up treating them like they had treated us. So my task was to first survive, but then not to hate, and certainly to acknowledge the fact that I am complicit in this reality because I have the bloodline of the Europeans, as well as the indigenous, quote, Indians, as well as the Africans. But my task was to first survive and then find a way to reconnect our human family. And that's what I began to do when I was 50 years old. I shut down my offline life, and you'll find now, if you Google Andrew Williams Jr., that I've done my best to share with the world the information that I believe could be helpful to causes I care about and hopefully uplift other causes around the world. One example of that right now is here with us now, Mr. Lloyd Helferty in Canada. When I began this journey in 2008, I did so with the idea that it was necessary for us to reconnect not just ourselves in my local community. At that time, I was living in Los Angeles, and find ways that we could open up the doors between our peoples. But in looking around the world, it was clear that while I don't accept, agree with, or condone all of the actions by the organization called the United Nations, it is, in fact, the representative of over 193 countries or governments of countries, and does provide a platform that we can actually find tools and resources to connect those dots. So as you may recall, it was 1999 when Kofi Annan, then head of the United Nations, led us into what was then billed as the Millennium Development Goals. And that was for a 1,000-year plan for us to achieve peace on Earth during our lifetime. A companion to that was the Millennium Development Goals, the first 15-year segment of that. But we made the transition to now what's called the Sustainable Development Goals. So in my role as president of 5 Points Youth Foundation, to me by Charles D. Sharp out of Washington, D.C., who's heading the Black Emergency Managers Association and a member of the United Nations Global Compact. That's the companion organization that's intended to have business and civil society to connect together with governments to, quote, leave no one behind. A goodwill ambassador, and later appointed ambassadors around the world, over 100, to focus on the effort to leave no one behind. So Lloyd Helferty, if you're there and can unmute yourself, I'd be happy to have you be introduced. Lloyd, as I said, is in Canada, but Canada is unique in many ways. One, it's not only what's called a Francophone country, where it's a member of those countries around the world where French is an official language, but it's also a member of the Commonwealth of Nations. But more importantly, Lloyd is understanding that we all live here on what's called Turtle Island. And so I do appreciate Lloyd's ability to introduce himself now and take the stage. Lloyd Helferty, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrew. I actually don't have a whole lot of time here because my wife will be teaching fairly soon. She's about to get up and have her own class, which she's continuing here, even while we are traveling overseas. So odd times, but we're doing this. Lloyd Helferty, I am, as Andrew noted, a Goodwill Ambassador to the 5 Points Youth Foundation and the Ad Hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors, which of course Andrew created a number of years ago, with my portfolio being, as he mentioned, Turtle Island, North America, which is essentially Canada, the US, Mexico, the Caribbean, Central America, and South America by treaty, along with all of those Francophonie, French-speaking members of the Francophonie. I believe there are 88 states and jurisdictions, including the province of Quebec, as well as the province of Ontario, which is a member, even though it's a majority English-speaking province. There are a number of Francophone speakers in our province, back where I hail from, along with the Commonwealth of Nations, which is, I believe, now 53 or 54 countries in the world who were part of the original Commonwealth created by the royal family in England as they were expanding and sought to, of course, impose their will on many of the nations that they had previously colonized. And so we are coming together and planting what we call youth peace gardens around the world. And with these youth peace gardens, we plant the trees of peace and reconciliation in them, along with some peace poles, which we also put into schools. And with those peace gardens and the peace poles and other symbols of peace, including an Indigenous unity flag, we are beginning to establish a network of community unity garden learning centers around the world, which would train, educate young people and families in all our local communities around the various solutions that we can discover in each of our own watersheds and communities and bioregions with regard to how to globalize those global goals that Andrew talked about, those currently the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and post 2030, what we expect to be perhaps a set of regenerative development goals, which we are anticipating may be the future of those United Nations global goals to achieve peace on Earth.
Well, thank you so very much, Lloyd. I appreciate that. I'm going to shift this back to Calvin Pearson and then back to Stuart.
Well, thank you again. Let me just go back and briefly talk about joy and sorrow that Thoreau was talking about. And joy and sorrow affects us all. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, because the way I look at it, they have the rich have just as many problems as we do. A poor man can lose $20 and feel depressed. A rich man can lose $1 million and feel depressed. It's just that each of them feeling it on a different level, a different degree. So joy and sorrow is not strictly for one part of our society. It affects us all. When we talk about Thoreau, and I've said this before, idea of the upcoming wars and social conflicts that make living a lot more complicated today than it was a simpler life back in the 1800s. So living back in the 1800s, Thoreau kept
Okay. Oh, thanks. Oh, thanks for technology is only great when it works. Lloyd, can you hear us? Okay. Is the audio? Oh, great. Thank you so much. So Stuart Sinclair Weeks. Again, we're here at Walden Pond. I'm not sure if you'd like to share with our audience any of our closing thoughts as we get ready to move towards the church. But let's see here. Here, now's the time to decide what we want to do.
Yeah, I'll be glad to. So a few things, friends, not a lot, but a few things before we transition to the next session. This year, as I mentioned, I just want to reiterate because I think this was a real departure. We introduced on the day after Earth Day, which happened to be a Sunday, a Father Sunday. As far as I know, though I hope others have done the same, we're bringing together the earth and the sun, the masculine and the feminine, if I may suggest, the heavens and the earth, because we, the people, great challenges to find that complementarity, to find how we can be, in the truest sense of the word, consorts for one another, which are divine or spiritual companions, men and women. And so we inaugurated this year in April, the Mother Earth and Father Sunday. Connected with that, 33 years ago, we held the Walden Earth Care Congress here at Walden Pond in Concord. That was the 20th anniversary of Earth Day, and the heads of all the major environmental organizations were with us. not so much because of us, but because of Henry David Thoreau, Walden Pond, and Concord. It was a remarkable event. We had John Kerry, we had corporate officials, political figures, folks from the EPA, academics, well-known scholars, artists, and we had Native American indigenous grandmothers. And we began the Walden Earth Care Congress and Network. I mention that because 33 years later, this 4th of July, we will inaugurate the Walden Earth Care and Live Aid 2 crescendoing concert of concerts. Again, the Walden Earth Care and Live Aid 2 crescendoing concert of concerts. And I look forward to speaking later today with a trustee of the Center for American Studies, Dr. Ronald McDowell, who happened to have been Michael Jackson, the King of Pop's art teacher and costume designer, but more significantly, his beloved brother and advisor, and Martha Reeves of Motown. Because this year, and I'm speaking to you on Juneteenth, we want the call for a Walden Earth Care and Live Aid 2 crescendoing concert of concerts to come from our Black brothers and sisters. Envision with Live Aid 1 for the proceeds from these concerts. We're speaking of the crescendoing concert of concerts to go to the impoverished around the world, beginning with the native peoples in our country, those in Ethiopia, and really all around the world who don't have food, who don't have water, who don't have shelter, who don't have medical care. This will be a labor of love. It won't be cut promoters and to government agencies. This will be funds that will be going to a portal at the Federal Reserve that we are working with a center trustee to establish. So the money will go directly to the people. We look forward at that concert of concerts to heralding not a new national anthem for those who want their bombs bursting in the air. You can have them, and even verses in that national anthem that are, some feel, and I agree, unfortunately racist. Those who want to keep that national anthem are welcome to do so. We'll be introducing this 4th of July at the beginning of the crescendoing concert of concerts, the Walden Earth Care and Live Aid 2 concert, a new all-American anthem. Not a national anthem, but a new all-American or global anthem in which each verse will be written by different peoples, American and global. So those are 2 initiatives that we make note of on this Juneteenth weekend celebration. And I want to give a last word to Andrew or Calvin, and then I'm going to read the final 5 lines of the opening mark our morning gathering. So back to Calvin.
I do want to also admit that this time around, the outcome and proceeds, as Stuart mentioned, will be going to the grassroots, because unfortunately the Live Aid 1, although it was well intentioned, it unfortunately resulted in the genocide of a significant number of the population of the people in Ethiopia. That's not so well known, but we want to make sure that this time around we do address the root cause and root solutions. Thank you so much, Stuart. It's a good week.
Yes, and to clarify there, so what Andrew, I believe, was saying from the Live Aid 1 concert, including in Ethiopia, who used those funds for armaments for the genocide. And we are intent upon seeing that these concert, Live Aid 2, Walden Earth Care Congress concert, the crescendoing concert of concerts, that the funds go to the people, So I'll conclude with these last 5 lines from Walden. We read about how this bug deposited with an egg in this hand-celled furniture, this table in the living room around which the family sat, because of a hot urn on the table, was brought to life and began to try to gnaw its way out of that wooden tomb. And Thoreau ends by saying, and we are here at Walden Pond by the replica of his cabin site here in Concord, he ends by saying, I do not say that John or Jonathan will realize all this, but such is the character of that moral which mere lapse of time can never make to dawn. The light which puts out our eyes is darkness to us. Only that day dawns to which we are awake. There is more day to dawn. The sun is but a morning star. And those last words of Thoreau, which we'll take up, begin the book of Revelations. The sun is but a morning star. So I'm going to give it to Andrew to bid everybody adieu until our next session at 1.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us, Lloyd, and also Veritas. This is Andrew Williams Jr., and we're going to close it out today, or at least for this portion of the day. You can actually find more information if you go to our Facebook page. You'll see a cover there for Juneteenth 2023. And if you click on that, you'll see the list of scheduled activities for today. We're going to take off. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day. Love to all.